Boo. Live streamer jump scare. Hello. I am live a few minutes early. You see, this is because I am excited. Because it is a nice day today. It is, like... That sounds stupid, and that's because it is. But that is legitimately why I'm in a good mood right now. Time to ruin it by playing Mario Kart Wii on the internet with other people who all hate me. Yeah. So that's what's what for stream today. I'm doing the thing again. Twitch is misbehaving. I don't know what Twitch is doing. Why did it do this? Why? Why? Twitch, what is wrong with you? Ah! Stop playing audio. Did it do this? Why? Leftist audio moment. Okay. Alright. Stream manager, please stop misbehaving. That would be great. That'd be nice. That would be good. Okay. It is now behaving more or less how I want it to. So, I'm streaming early. I also might not be streaming as long as I usually do, but definitely until at least 2:30. That much I am gonna do. Anybody I recognize here? No, actually. All new people. New faces. I got a few things to talk about on the little text document list of things today. But none of them are huge. None of them are huge things. They're just kind of harping on points that I've made before. And then, you know, I'm probably going to go on a walk later. Might end stream early to do that, because it's real nice outside, and I want to go touch grass, as it were. No, what did I do? Damn it. Okay, we're good, we're good, we're good. We are good. Alright, awesome. There's only one thing of bad news today. Which is nice. There's one thing of good news, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. And then there's some commentary that I wanted to offer on something that that many lefties will talk about, but I actually wanted to mention a little bit because it's relevant to how lefties and liberals should engage with each other, or more accurately, how you should approach politics as a leftist when you're working with liberals. And you know, it will involve me making fun of liberals, as I frequently do. Yeah. This is inside the brain of your average liberal, the thing I wanted to talk about, so that lefties can understand. Look at this guy go. He's using the spear. What a champion. True champion of the craft. Let me pull up that first thing. The one bit of bad news. In fact, both news items actually come from Erin Reed. Erin in the Morning, shoutouts. She covers trans issues in America. She's a journalist. Friend of the stream. Not like I know her personally, but I have referred to her journalism a few times, and she does good work. So that's why I say friend of the stream. No, I was disconnected? Bullshit. Damn. It says my connection is unstable, but my connection is in fact very stable. Okay, we got a different room this time. I think I recognize Jordan, but not anybody else. Please let it be quick entry. Alright, anyways. I guess if anything, that's free license for me to get started on this story. So from Erin Reed. Democrats in Washington State, that's in the U.S. Northwest, passed a PRIA Act, PRIEA, which will likely result in forced outing of trans students in the state. Initiative 2081 gathered enough signatures to go on the ballot. So the reason the word initiative is used is because this was a ballot initiative. It was a like a referendum. Rather than fighting it at the ballot box, they decided to pass it instead. Horrific. There's some screenshots of the bill text. I'll mostly refer to what Erin has to say about it because the full text is pretty dry and she gives some highlights from the text with quotations. The bill gives parents the, quote, right to inspect mental health records, unquote, and, quote, mental health counseling. It would also allow parents to opt out of education on, quote, topics associated with sexual activity, unquote, which will be used to bar queer topics in school. Anytime that sex ed is brought up, it's usually, like in politics, anytime sex ed is mentioned, it is mostly from the perspective of not allowing there to be any non-heteronormative sex ed in schools. Because even if they are, if conservatives are not as insane as most Republicans and aren't completely opposed to the concept of sex ed, usually the kind of sex ed they want is just hetero sex ed. Like not any of that gay degeneracy stuff, but rather man and a woman. Which I mean, that's better than nothing, but it's still not good from the perspective of like making students feel like they belong in the world and all that, and educating them to sort of understand how romantic and sexual relationships work, particularly if they're like, well, what if I'm a guy and I don't like girls? What if I'm a girl and I don't like guys? Or something like that. I think we all know, what the issue is there. Ow. Oh, shit. Oh, we both got hit by that. Alright. Ow. God damn. The issue is Goomba? That's true. That is the issue. We have Goombas running the country. That's big problem. Ah. Yo, what's up, 1v3? I'm dead. Just talking about a unfortunate ballot measure that passed well, it passed at the ballot box. It was like a public referendum, and unfortunately Democrats decided to pass a piece of anti-trans legislation which would effectively enable parents to get queer topics removed from school curriculum, including but not limited to anything regarding mental health and sex ed. And it would also make it a lot easier if they wanted to like harass trans students and pick through their medical records and stuff. Which, of course, medical records are supposed to be confidential, but a lot of times it's a lot easier to pick apart the rights of kids, given that they are still considered like wards of their parents or wards of the state or something like that, depending on the context. Yeah, here we go. Here's the next bit. Aaron Reed goes on to say, Democrats are likely making the calculation that they want to fight this in the courts. Had they voted against it, it would go on the November ballot. However, now it just straight up becomes law. The state is, to my knowledge, the first blue state with a forced outing law, which is really not a good look, if we're being honest here. Chris Rufo is cheering on the result this evening. Stunning betrayal of trans and queer residents in the state and a complete lack of willingness to fight this at the ballot box, which I think Aaron Reed is correct that like the Democrats ultimately should have done that, because if you let something pass, it just becomes law, right? Like, even if you fight it in the courts, it takes time to get something like a, I don't know, an injunction passed, anything that would prevent the law from being enforced. Because now that you've made yourself be on the back foot. If you wait for something to become law before you even fight it, you've effectively conceded the entire point already, right? Like, you're counting on the most disproportionately conservative set of institutions in the country, the courts, to win a, like, battle, a political battle for a minority group. Are you kidding me? The courts have historically been the biggest obstacle to minority rights in the United States. You know? Even when the court has made some good decisions, it took a lot of bad ones first. You know, we could bring up the decisions of Brown v. Board and Loving v. Virginia and all that. But for every one of those, there's a Plessy v. Ferguson and a Dred Scott decision behind it, where, maybe in the 20th century, the court ruled that, like, yeah, black people are citizens and entitled to equal rights. But, not but few decades prior, they ruled, actually, black people are literally not human, not eligible for citizenship by virtue of being black. And also, if they do have some rights and privileges, they should be racially segregated. Like, I don't know. It's not, oh, Jesus Christ. Fucking bumper car moment. It's just not a good strategy from the Democrats. They shouldn't have let it get to this point in the first place. Here we go. Forced outing has not won when Moms for Liberty has run on it. That's one of the really far-right parent groups, right-wing advocacy groups, that includes a lot of parents that, well, hate their trans children or their queer children and whatever. And Aaron is right. This is not a winning issue for the right. And if the Democrats had fought this and gotten it to be stayed off until November, it probably would have lost, because in November there would have been a much larger turnout and more eyes would be on the issue. And when as many eyes as you can get on the issue of trans rights are on that issue, conservatives lose. Moms for taking away the liberty of others? Yes, that's right. Considering that they are an actual Hitlerite organization who had to take down their website briefly because they included Hitler quotes about he who controls the youth controls the future. Yeah. Even if the bill would have passed at the ballot box, the strategy of fighting it in court would still happen. So it's just Democrats making a political calculation not to fight at all for their queer residents. That's absolutely true. That's what I was saying earlier. Is that they've, preemptively conceded. Ah, this track. I see. I don't know if anybody's gonna hit that, but... Whoa! Okay. Can't believe I didn't get fucked up by that Cataquack. Is this mirror mode? I don't know if this is mirror mode. Like the Dems give a fuck about trans people. Some of them do. But, see, the problem that Dems face is that, for many of them, you're right. A lot of the Democrats don't actually really give a fuck about trans people. As a political party, they're more interested in their own preservation and, well, political interests, whatever. And also, the Democratic Party is a liberal party, so they are sentenced to perpetual incompetence, because there are certain modes of analyzing the world that liberals are fundamentally incapable of engaging with, and ones where they win is like That's like a pretty big chunk. You know, like liberals are very bad at um, coping with the world in which they win sometimes. It isn't what? A liberal party? The Democrats are absolutely liberals. Okay. He probably. Oh, that's this track. Okay, okay, okay. Gotcha. Oh, it isn't mirror. Okay, yeah. Thank you, thank you. Sorry, I've very passing question at the beginning of that. Ow. Yeah, fair enough. No, why'd you do that? You were already gonna pass me. Okay. Anyways. Let's see, the Democratic Speaker of the House and a Democratic Senator, anticipating blowback, wrote a "Why We Are Passing the Story," where they state that they do not believe it poses a threat to queer youth, but will watch closely. Now, that's absolute bullshit. Democrats know that this poses a threat to queer youth. Otherwise, they wouldn't have written that. The truth is, red districts in Washington state will absolutely read the law as granting permission for forced outing. They're being willfully obtuse, and they know that it will put queer people at risk. Bill was passed with haste, with little input, and now Washington State will become the first state to move from a dark blue safe on my risk assessment map to either light blue or light red, low to medium risk for trans youth moving forward. Yeah, this is a big thing too. One thing that I see often is, again quoting from Aaron Reed, is red state legislators trying to find examples of Democrats voting against trans people and then saying, "See, this isn't controversial." I think that many may be concerned with the precedent this will set. Every time one of these kinds of votes happens, she's absolutely right. Or like an article gets written in the New York Times, right-wingers jump on that because Democrats are seen as the party that is more friendly to trans people. And the New York Times is seen as a reputable news journal outlet. So any example of the Republicans getting some sort of institutional victory from the Democrats and from nominally left-leaning news outlets, they parade about it because it's like, oh, haha, we don't like these people, and even they are agreeing with us on this front. See, this gives more credence to our stance on things. And, to harp on what the Democrats were saying about this earlier and what Aaron Reed said about this isn't even good political strategy. Transphobia as a set of policy positions is a losing issue for Republicans. The Democrats should have been fighting this all the way to the November ballot, but they didn't. Because they, quite frankly, the way I know how to put this is that Democrats know how to lose better than they know how to win. When Democrats lose, that's something that they can campaign on. That's something they can go to their voters and market and say, hey, this is why you should vote for us, right? And it gives them a very easy source of money and support for the next election. It's the same thing with stuff like abortion. And they're also under the weird delusion that Republicans are playing their game. Liberals are a weird kind of, not just moral realist, but, institutional realist. Where they think that, oh, the way we're engaging with institutions is fundamentally the way that everybody is engaging with institutions in politics, which is not even remotely true. Our policy positions are ultimately so unambiguously correct that everybody at their core must have those same policy positions. This is a mistake that they make always when they're engaging with the right wing. When, in fact, a lot of right-wingers are just insane and, quite frankly, despicable people. especially in politics. And so that hamstrings them, because liberals always go like, oh, bipartisanship, 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 and it leads them to do things like this, where it's like, oh, well, we can fight this in the courts, and we can pass this now. It's not that big of a deal. The process will work itself out. And they meanwhile, they don't even realize that they've already admitted defeat. But anyways. That's all the airtime I really want to give to that. Because hopefully, I mean, obviously, I don't want to stake too much on this, but definitely people aren't going to be very happy with this in Washington State. Because like I said, being pro-trans is a very popular stance to have. This is mirror mode. Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Pretty wacky. The item, please. Thank you. Like that item. Get a trick there. It's kind of wacky. All right. Let's go. Three blue shells. God damn. No, you son of a bitch. Oh, I raced that so well, then I got blued 3 times, and because my lead wasn't as big as 3 blue shells, I just lose. Well, not lose, but I get second. Rip. Seriously, my lead was gargantuan. And then 3 blue shells in 30 seconds. Oh. You see the PM of Greece almost getting killed by Russia. What? Greek PM was visiting Odessa with Zelensky and Russia shot rockets at them. Okay. Rocket exploded like 150 meters from the 2 of them. Interesting. Well, and Putin better thank his lucky stars that he didn't accidentally kill a head of state from a country that was in NATO. Shot rockets at their motorcade? God damn. Alright. We get, now let's get the law of equivalent exchange. How are you doing in your own life? I'm doing quite well. Work has been work. I actually haven't heard anything the past couple of days. Seems like things are slowing down a little bit, so that's been nice. Uh, Weather's been getting warmer, which has been making me feel better. I've been trying to read at least semi-consistently, which is, well, it's a task. Work has been work. Yeah, I mean, you know, not much I can really say about it. I'll block? Okay. I'm actually trying to save this mushroom until lap 3, if possible. I'm aware that might not be possible, but, you know, I can try, because 6 king. And if not, then at least I have something to dodge a blue shell. Mega mushroom. Mm. No, bean corner! So much for that. Well, actually, now that I'm in 5th... Aha! That's actually perfect. And as far as I know, the only item that they could potentially get to ruin my day would be a POW. So... I'm gonna use one of these here. I hang a left. And then watch this. Yeah! You only need one mushroom to do that. It's kind of wild. You go all the way to the end. Broken ass shortcut. Alright. Oof. Dare you to win without using items? Well, I can't do that. I'm not good enough at the game to do that. But I can try next race. I can do a no item run. Alright. Next thing. Law of equivalent exchange. We got good news now from a different state in the United States. It's getting spicy. Yeah. Here's actually, this is proof to what I was saying earlier, that anti-trans politics are not popular. Anti-trans Texas Democrat Terry falls behind primary challenger Simmons. Runoff next. Anti-trans Democrat Sean Terry came in second place to challenger Lauren Ashley Simmons, a black queer union organizer, in the greatest test for Democrats compromising on transgender rights. A Houston Democrat who delivered a lengthy anti-trans speech on the Texas House floor before voting for the state's gender-affirming care ban, finished second in a Texas primary challenge. Representative Sean Terry garnered 44% of the votes in Tuesday's primary election. Her challenger, Lauren Ashley Simmons, received 49.5%, just shy of the 50% needed to avoid going to a second round. And I did skim through the article before reading it on stream here. Aaron Reed goes on to say that, like, even though there is a third candidate in the race here, either way, Sean Terry is kind of cooked, because that third candidate, even though they only got like 6% of the vote, they were also critical of Sean Terry for being anti-trans, you know? Oh my god, okay. So, trans people stay winning in the epic marketplace of ideas. Very weird interaction with that thing. Oh, damn it. I said I was going to do no items and I didn't. I'll do that next race. This track is quite a doozy. I forgot. Silly me. No animation trick. How about that? Okay. No! Damn it. Okay. What is everybody doing here? That guy's having the time of his life up there. Why would I even use a mushroom on this track? Still 1.5 hours for that gamer challenge? Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm not taking the challenge to be, like, win without using items, because I know I probably can't. Or if I can, it's gonna take so much grinding. God damn it. I don't know why that happened that time and not any of the previous times, but okay. Alright, here we go. No, what the fuck? I tilted right, and it shot me to the left. Alright. Next race, no items. Let's do it. Not that it's gonna matter that much, because there's only 3 fucking people, but... Here we go. Okay, so more details. Representative Terry faced widespread condemnation on May 12th after a full floor hearing and vote on Senate Bill 14, a gender-affirming care ban. During the hearing, she delivered an extended speech in which she described trans girls as, quote, biological males, referred to gender-affirming care as, quote, chemical castration, and claimed that gender dysphoria could be resolved, quote, by therapy, echoing assertions made by conversion therapy advocates. And pro-Democratic Party groups, or, otherwise left-wing groups, were really not happy about this, funnily enough. Saying that your kid's gender identity isn't valid, actually, and also, that they are I don't know, they need to go to therapy and not transition, you know, it's a pretty ghoulish thing to say. Until the therapist recommends gender-affirming care. Yeah, that's the thing, too. Whenever people say, oh, well, you just need therapy to resolve gender dysphoria, they don't actually mean that. What they mean is go to conversion therapy, like with, you know, religious crazies. Because most of the time, if you go to a therapist and express some, like, very concerted, very, like, long-standing issues with your gender identity and gender nonconformity, whatever, your therapist will refer to you to different sources, and they will discuss the possibility with you that you might be trans. And like, it's a pretty normal thing to do with the therapist. But that's not the outcome that they're fishing for here. You know? So when they say therapy, they don't actually mean therapy, they mean conversion therapy. Also, this is the no item race. I have a banana in my inventory here, but I'm not going to use it. After this race, I can get to the absolute alphabet soup of groups that were not happy with Senator Terry for this. Oh, okay. I said it would take forever. That actually ended up being pretty easy. Oh, well. Might have 4 players. Yeah, fuck it. Since when have I really cared about the size of a room? Yeah, here we go. Simmons, the challenger in this case, rapidly garnered endorsements from prominent Democrats and organizations in Texas. Among her major endorsements are former Representative Beto O'Rourke, Texas AFT, Texas AFL-CIO, Planned Parenthood, Human Rights Campaign, Houston Federation of Teachers, Equality Texas, SEIU Texas, Queer Victory Fund, and the Houston Chronicle. So, like, everybody. So fucking unions and pro-queer groups and, like, Planned Parenthood and human rights organizations all were like, yes, we endorse Simmons, and not the fucking wacko who said some transphobic shit. Yeah, here. Meanwhile, Representative Sean Terry... Okay, Representative, not Senator. Sean Terry's small dollar fundraising efforts began to wane, and her campaign was sustained only by significant contributions from Republican donors, despite her district's Democrat plus 80 rating. Which means that, like, there's an 80% gap between the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate in that. That's 90-10. That's a, like, 90-10 left-leaning district. And she's saying this shit. And the Republicans are like, yes, bravo, we love bipartisanship. And by bipartisanship, we mean when Democrats say transphobic things. Alright, I'm not doing the no item thing anymore, because I did that the one race, and, you know. Who's come back? Never mind. Mushroom. Cool. Bipartisan transphobia. Yeah, that's true. Nice. I am in first now. No, I hit the fucking green shell. Because I'm silly. That's okay. I'll get a good item now. Yes! Perfect! Now I gotta let them fight it out. And just wait for my moment. Like this. Easy money! How'd the no item game go? I got first. It was on Rosalina's Ice World, and I just raced the whole race without items and was in first the whole time, and then won the race. That was about it. I was expecting like, okay, I'm gonna get blown up a couple times, blue shell, but no, I just kind of front ran and got first. GG, man, skills. Yeah, I didn't expect to win. That was definitely more of a luck thing than anything. I mean, I drove skillfully, but the fact that I didn't get hit by a red shell or a blue shell is pretty remarkable, I think. Because even if there's only 2 players, you can get blue shells in rooms like that. What else to expect from the world's best races? True. That's absolutely true. Yeah. So, even though Representative Terry did receive a bunch of money from Republican groups, that wasn't enough to save her ass in the primary. She got 44% of the vote. Lauren Ashley Simmons got just under 50%. So now what's going to happen is the third candidate, Ashton Woods, will be eliminated from the race, and it'll go to a second round. And undoubtedly, Simmons will win that contest over Terry, and they'll get an actual like pro-trans representative in that part of Texas, which will be that'll be good. So, you know, transphobia stay losing. Oh, damn it. Okay, I'm good, I'm good. That guy's way up there, though. I don't know how to do the, shortcut route. I used to be really good at it, but I don't know it on Mach Bike. I'm probably just gonna throw this. I don't think it matters that much. It wasn't bad, but could have been better. Ooh, okay. Gotta really take that turn tight in the future. That kind of helped for me to get up that faster. So. This guy's putting items in all sorts of tricky spots. Oh, did he fall off? He did. Ah. Rare instance of actually catching up on Mushroom Peaks. Gonna get me with that. Silly, silly man. Nice try. I got him. Blooper really helped me there. And that was another very weird trick, but it like kind of worked out, so. His banana's not there anymore, so that's good. Yeah, red shells aren't great on this map. Think, yes, okay, made it. He's got a mushroom. He's almost undoubtedly got a red shell. No, never mind, mushroom. Okay. Ooh. Don't mind if I do. Oh no, he had another mushroom? That's crazy. I wish European countries were more honest and just admit that they will never enforce the sanctions. They have been enforcing the sanctions, but they've designed the sanctions to be lightweight. You can't just sanction your way out of this war. The problem is that Europe and America have been dragging their feet on giving aid to Ukraine, and they've also been attaching a ton of strings. Here, seriously, the thing is about like a war is that it's typically waged by two countries, right? Which means that they are both involved. Both of their lands will experience the war. But Europe and America have been very keen on conditioning the aid that they give to Ukraine, with saying like, but you can't do anything to Russia. You have to keep the fight in Ukraine, which means that basically they've said, yeah, we'll give you aid, but you have to lose eventually, which is impossible. It's an impossible like thing. The West has shot themselves in the foot with that. They trade so much with Russia. Everybody does. Russia isn't as powerful of a trading unit on the world stage as somewhere like the U.S. or China. But everybody. It's kind of unavoidable that countries do business with Russia. It's just how stuff works. Especially for stuff like LNG, natural gas, and whatnot. Well. They're more open to strikes in Russia nowadays. Yeah, I think NATO recently gave the go-ahead for Ukraine to do that, which is good. But, it's like too little too late, man. The best item. Ooh. Could use that. No, what the fuck? You can't do that? That's so dumb. Bad track design. Okay. Alright. Mega Mushroom. It's not especially helpful to me, but sure, I guess. Three mushrooms, that's something. A bomb. Huh? Blue shell. Huh. Okay. It didn't do much. Wait a minute. No! If I had just gotten that a hair earlier. Only 4 people, huh? I guess this is just a small room kind of day. Oh well. I also, this stream, I think I will do the thing that I've been wanting to do for a couple streams, which is to, after I'm done, like, after however much time has passed, to go to my other monitor and look through this class conflict article that I saw. The children out here are getting more violent towards the teachers in high school. Just sad, really. What do you mean by out here? Also, I don't trust the news with that, ever. Unless they cited academic studies, I don't trust that. Right? Because, like, I've heard plenty of news stories about stuff from, like, everything from crime to people being desensitized to violence. None of that stuff is actually backed up by data. It's just a product of news needing something that's, like, spooky. You know? Like, there's actually, despite every argument that Jack Thompson has ever made about, like, violent video game, whatever, there is zero evidence that people are more violent towards each other now than they have been at any other given point in history, for which we have any, like, reasonable estimates or any kind of data. Using a lot of cancer in their language out here in Netherlands, also intimidating the teachers. And again, I stress that this probably isn't actually very different from any other time in history. It's just that the language that people use now is unfamiliar to the language that people may have used 40, 50 years ago. So people freak out about that, and it gets on the news. It's basically just a segment of them going, kids these days, and kids have always been like that. I will make the room have more than 2.48 chatters. Thank you, Gengarite29. Welcome to chat. Any story like that, anytime you see on the news, people now, or kids now, are more blank than they ever have been, unless they cite a study, assume that they're lying. Seriously, because that's the job of news outlets. Their job is to sell papers. Thank you for getting my name right. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Gengar, very recognizable name to me. Pokemon enjoyer. Some people just say gingerite or some dumb bullshit. Damn. This news is real, man. I know children and teens from different schools, and they tell all the same kinds of stories. Heck, I've seen it with my own eyes. Anecdotal evidence is irrelevant in cases like this. You would need data to convince me that that's actually the case. One guy just gave up and calls me generate. Damn, that's funny. Again, I will go back to saying that, like, anytime the news invokes a story like that, kids these days are so violent. They will always come at you with a bunch of anecdotes, which don't actually mean anything. If you count all the anecdotes, all you have is a bunch of anecdotes. That's not data. You know, even personal experiences, like, they're not invalid. Like, yeah, sure, those instances of violence are instances of violence, but it's not statistically representative of anything. You know? Like, if I were to make a similar argument from my own personal experience, I would say that mass shootings are not a problem because I myself have never been in a mass shooting and never experienced one firsthand. But we know from statistics and data that that's not true, that mass shootings are a problem because we see them as, like, regular occurrences in data sheets relative to other forms of, of violence and whatever. Like, You know, you can compare the rates of that statistically in the United States to other countries, and it is more of a problem here than it is in somewhere like Europe. That's how we know that mass shootings are a problem, not because the news talks about it and makes it sound scary. You know, it's the same thing, again, same thing with crime. News outlets will fixate on instances of violent crime, which undoubtedly do happen. But then they'll say like, oh my god, crime, so scary, crime is up. When crime is the fucking lowest it's been, at least in America, in 30 years. And that's what the data says. The news is a very, very convenient place to spin a misleading narrative, especially when it's about something that reactionaries very easily default to, like kids these days, or crime, or scary brown people, or whatever it is, right? Hit myself with my own bomb. Many such cases. Soon crime will be at 120%? Yes, everybody will be required by law to commit at least one crime per year. You get a tax refund if you do it. I see the Russian username and I raise you my hometown where probably more than half the residents are Russians that don't bother to learn my language. Well, you know, I'm not actually Russian, you see. Also, wow, that's a lot of Russian speakers. Ow. Ow. Ah. Another Baltic individual. Very cool. Yeah, the Bolshevik name is more of a meme than anything. My political leanings are more complicated than just Bolshevik. Yeah. Ukrainians bother to learn Estonian, but Russians will live 6 years without knowing a word in Estonian. You know what that is? That's imperial core privilege. Seriously, it's the same reason that Americans, British, and French don't have to learn other languages, because their languages are spoken very widely. You know, even with Russia, which Russian isn't spoken as widely or in as far corners of the world as a language like English, because of the residual effects of the Soviet Union and all the residual geopolitical influence that Russia used to have, you know, they can still, you know, a lot of neighboring countries around Russia still have very large Russian-speaking populations, so people can get away with just speaking Russian there. Oh, hold on. That looks like it's data. I'll read that in a second. How long is the politics podcast going for? About an hour. I mean, the timer on the right hand there, just under my webcam, is how long I have been streaming for. The translation is horrible. Rip. Never trust Google Translate. Yeah, you can like Google Translate is contextually useful, but there's definitely situations where you don't want to go to Google Translate for certain stuff. For 1 hour 15 minutes. Yeah, there's a little bit of setup time each time on my stream. So like, I hit the live stream button an hour 15 minutes ago. But the time that I've actually been streaming and playing the game is only about an hour, because there's like setup time that I have to do beforehand. And I also like The cold open is not something I'm great at, so like I have a waiting room and stuff. Yeah. Google Translate butchers my language too. Google Translate butchers a lot of languages, except for like English and French and like Spanish. That's basically it. All right. In the interim 2022 to 2023, 2,152 new files were received by the reporting center in education. It was certain that there was 1,743 before that. In childcare, there were 233 files in 2022 compared to 134 in 2019. Okay, there we go. So there we go. That's data. Yeah, on that front, I will agree that there's probably there's a problem there that is resulting in an increase in I don't know, some violent tendencies, or at least in the reporting of those violent tendencies in the youth. Now, depending on what is responsible for those additional reports, it could be good or bad. The most likely thing is that post-pandemic social norms and social institutions have eroded away. You remember the MatPat video, right? 1v3. Thank God I learned a real language like American. True. American's the best language. You know, because of stuff that like MatPat would have talked about in the one video, basically the pandemic accelerated a bad trend that already existed, where social institutions were being eroded away, and basically, for lack of a like more compressed term to use, late stage capitalism was resulting in a lot more of an antisocial environment, and led to people being more alienated, more isolated, and stuff like that. That makes people be antisocial, and when people are antisocial, they act pretty fucking weird, you know, and a bit more violent. That's one likely explanation, and on that front, I will agree, because we're probably seeing similar trends just about everywhere. And a lot less saunas, so that's completely fair and square. Yeah, and like unironically, the fact that there being something like the fact that there are fewer saunas is like an example of the problem, you know, because there's like fewer environments where people can be social with each other, which is not good. People need to be social with each other. Remember having David Beckham in a sauna here? Dude, that's fucking cool. Bend it like Beckham. Or am I thinking of the wrong Beckham? Fuck. Anyways, the slightly less likely thing that could be happening is that it's been more socially normalized for people to report instances of violence and abuse, which means that there's not really more of this stuff actually happening, but people are reporting it more, which would be good. The fact that people report stuff like this is a good thing. You know, it happening is obviously not good. We made Skype? Really? Oh, that's sick. Estonia is filled with Russians. So yeah, then on that front, then I would agree. Yeah, that's probably a problem. Although I think I still wouldn't trust that much what the news has to say about things, because they usually even when they say something true, right? If they talk about where there has actually been an increase in crime, let's say if there's an instance where an increase in crime did happen, or if adolescent people are, you know, being more violent, if there's an uptick in violence against teachers, I don't trust the news to accurately represent that or to frame it in the correct way, because they would still, even if they're identifying something that is happening, they would use the framing of, man, kids these days, or we have criminals running rampant in the streets, or something like that, which assumes the wrong cause of the problem, right? No, don't hit the wall there. Ah. Didn't realize I was out of bounds. Once you get this from NOS, they got to be as neutral as possible in their journal. I know that a lot of news outlets claim to be neutral, but you know they're not. Every news outlet has a bias, and that bias ultimately for almost every news outlet, that bias is towards ratings, towards the money that they can get for like selling their newspaper and stuff like that. Even the best news outlets, the ones that I would frequently go to for a lot of stuff. You've seen me refer to sites like Reuters and Associated Press and whatever. Even on the issues that they're usually pretty good on, they fall into certain pitfalls. You can never just trust a news outlet. You have to sort of understand, like, if they're saying the correct thing in the correct way, if they're, like, accurately representing the issue, because there's a lot of things that could incentivize them potentially to maybe say things a certain way, even if they're saying something true. Unless NOS isn't a news outlet in the sense that I'm thinking, like the New York Times would be. Read some pretty strange news title involving 4 Indians and a Bengali monitor lizard. That is pretty strange. Here, hold on. NOS News? NOS News. Sport on, Evenementen. It was a... Oh, it was a gang rape. I see. That's pretty bad, I think. Translate this page. Bro, that's fucking... That's whack. Rip Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, true. That's so true. And just like that, I win. I was disconnected. You got the world record. Yeah, 1 second. 1 second. Didn't even need to use any items. As soon as the race began, I had already won. Nothing personnel, kid. Teleports behind it. You get it. Alright. This is something that's been stewing in my head for a little bit. As we know, because I'm a leftist, I make fun of liberals. This is actually a requirement. If you are a leftist, you do have to make fun of liberals because they are quite silly. You know, I usually try to engage with things from like a materialist lens of analysis, which just means that like, oh, politics is like it's a matter of material interest. Who would it benefit for this to happen versus this? You know, groups will be acting for their own benefit, and that mostly manifests along class lines and stuff like that. But liberals don't approach politics like this. Most of them are idealists in the sense that they don't think materialism is a factor. Anyways, one of the most annoying tendencies that many people will cite for making fun of liberals is their obsession with Donald Trump. And don't get me wrong, Everybody talks about Donald Trump a lot. You know, nobody can really blame people for that. But the one thing that gets on myself, my nerves, and a lot of people on the left's nerves about liberals is that they seem to have a unique disdain for Trump, right? Like, liberals didn't really have a problem with Republican politicians in concept until Trump, right? Trump sneakers look ass. They definitely do, and that is funny as fuck. And you know, that's something for which I will make fun of Trump, and that's just funny. Trump is a source of unlimited comedy. It's like the comedy cheat code is that Donald Trump exists. You know, but you know, there are a lot of Republican politicians that in insofar as their moral convictions and the policies they support and whatever are actually worse than Trump. You know, Trump is now like not as bad as like half of Republicans in the party. You cannot deny that Trump has a gat, though. The one thing that the woke can't take away from him, that is true. Trump does have a big dumpy. Nobody can take this from Donald Trump. TBH, both Biden and Trump are too old for running a country. That's true, and that's one thing that liberals don't actually care about when they talk about Trump, because they'll defend Biden on that front too. But what I wanted to hone in on, right? Liberals have this unique disdain for Trump, like, that they don't have for other Republican politicians, even ones that are far worse, because Trump is ultimately, he's a grifter. His only interest is really in himself. So a lot of the fascist policies he supports, he doesn't himself genuinely believe in. He just does it for the clout and for the applause. So then why do liberals hate Trump so much, but not other Republicans? It's because he's rude. That really is it. You know, it's sort of a puzzling thing in my brain where you know, a lot of the conservative Democrats and the other Republicans and their like very, very poor policy decisions and you know, lack of tact on the Democratic side and like the you know, all sorts of critiques that could be levied are never levied until Trump enters the picture. And that's because none of those are the liberals' problem with Trump. It's just that he is uncouth, uncivil, and you know, angry and belligerent and whatever. Which is, funnily enough, it's the same reason that a lot of people on the right really like Trump, you know? This is a VSD-funded stream. That's true. Whoever is president does not matter because everything is Lithuania. That's absolutely true. Yeah. And so this is one thing I will endlessly make fun of liberals for, is that they are very civility politics built. A lot of liberals see politics as this like enlightened, civilized debate table where everybody comes around and they all discuss in a very cogent and level-headed manner what should be done with the country. That's not how this works, right? But that is why they hate Trump, is because he came to the table and he was angry and belligerent and then started yelling at and insulting people. Which on its own, if you have a good political message and you're insulting and yelling at your opponents, that's based. But in this case, Trump does not have a good political message or a good political objective. So, you know, it's cringe because the underlying things that he is arguing for or arguing against are cringe. You know, and a lot of times when I bring up with some folks that I know that are more on the liberal side of things, when I bring up that like civility politics is really fucking dumb, they go to the whole thing like, well, shouldn't you be civil to each other in politics? I mean, otherwise you can't have a discussion. You can't get things done. And you know what? I'll bite this bullet. No, you shouldn't. Politics is not about civility. I found another MKW streamer playing the game on a treadmill. Dude, that's dope. That's pretty wild. But like, liberals very commonly make the mistake of assuming that politics is about civility, or maybe not even the mistake, but they believe that politics is and should be about civility, about politeness. Like, fuck politeness. There are people's lives on the line here. You know, politics, you know, like I said, it's about competing material interests, and those interests are ultimately deciding who lives, who dies, who gets to participate in society as a first-class citizen, and who is relegated to political minority status, who is basically left out of the picture, and in some cases, literally, who is, like, sentenced to prison or executed or something. You know, now is not the time. Politics is the least appropriate time to focus on being civil and having the proper decorum and adherence to the gentleman's code and rules and stuff, right? It's one of the many things that I've talked about that hamstrings what would otherwise be a decent slate of policies on the part of liberals. You disagree? Well, then that makes you incorrect. I mean, I'll hear the argument, though. Being an asshole is shit? Yeah, sure. Being an asshole is shit if you're in an interpersonal context. Politics is not always an interpersonal context, right? Sure, there's a lot of brown-nosing and, like, ass-kissing that people have to do in politics, but if you can get away with being an asshole, you should absolutely be an asshole. Especially if you're in the right, you know? Like, you should be loud and impolite and unyielding when you're in something as important as a political policy-making debate. Like, seriously, like I mentioned, this decides who lives and who doesn't, or who, like, gets rights and who doesn't. Now is not the time to focus on being polite to each other. Some good discussion? Yeah, it is. Has the bill passed without compromise? No, and that's not what I'm referring to, ultimately. You can be uncivil and like, not civility politics pilled and still engage in certain methods of political compromise, right? Bernie Sanders certainly has in the past. At least more so than Democrats are willing to do, right? Being uncivil towards your opponents doesn't mean casting away the necessity of having to work with them on certain policy issues. Like, you know, if you don't have the votes, you don't have the votes, and like, that's a thing you need to work around. But, like, the Democrats are losing themselves so much ground by constantly referring to Republicans as our respected colleagues and whatever, because ultimately it's just them deluding themselves into thinking that if we're nice enough to Republicans, then maybe they'll support our policy agenda. That's not how this works, right? Republicans, at the end of the day, are a fascist party, and liberals or the Democrats, excuse me, are a liberal party. You know, they are ideologically, at least in most senses, they are ideologically opposed to each other. So you have to use other, like, you have to do methods of political maneuvering and compromise that actually work, and not, well, if I be nice to them, then they'll be nice to me. Because no, they won't be. Republicans won't do that. They'll invoke civility politics the other way, because believe it or not, invoking civility politics absolutely works on liberal politicians. Republicans have done this a number of times, but they do so disingenuously. There needs to be some respect for each other. I'm not saying that the Dems should suck Republican dick. I disagree. I don't think the Democrats need to have any respect for the Republicans, because the same is not true the other way around. Republicans have no respect for Democrats in the legislature. They've shown this multiple times. Even from just a procedural point of view, Republicans are not shy about breaking rules to get their policies passed, because their policies are really unpopular and would never withstand a sustained debate. Meanwhile, the Democrats will, like, they are so slavishly devoted to the rules and procedures of Congress, many of which aren't even law or enforceable, just for the sake of, like, keeping up appearances. Almost, it's almost like they're more concerned with appearing proper than they are about, like, actually benefiting people's lives. And that is civility politics, right? Like I said, in an interpersonal context, yeah, don't be an asshole, obviously, but this is politics. This is not an interpersonal context. This is a political context. And if you're dealing with fascists, it is absolutely justified to be an asshole. Discussion at that level should at least appear to be civil. I actually also disagree, because, like, a lot of the civility from Democrats' side ends up making them look weak, right? When they try to be all conciliatory and stuff towards Republicans, it makes it look like they have no spine. Republicans aren't doing that, so why should Democrats, right? It's not giving the Democrats any benefit to play nice with Republicans in that way. They need to be, well, belligerent, rhetorically speaking, and maybe even literally speaking. You know, a good parliament brawl never hurt anybody, except I mean, that's literally not true. A good parliament brawl hurts most people that participate in it. How the fuck can democracy function when politicians keep cussing each other out? I think you're missing the point of what I'm saying. Being uncivil doesn't necessarily involve cussing each other out all the time. Being uncivil means that you're not holding back from like saying, this politician hates the queer community and they want to see queer children dead. That is a substantive policy argument, but it is a very uncivil one. And Republicans would then have to disprove that. And if they don't, then that's on them, right? Like, when a brawl breaks out, that means all negotiation has broken down. Yeah, and like that happens in some situations. Basically, like the situations where there's a negotiational breakdown frequently happens in American politics, but never in such a way that Democrats are actually able to resolve it, because Democrats keep being conciliatory. You know? And look, the whole parliament brawl thing is ultimately a meme, right? Obviously, usually it's not a good idea for politicians to throw hands, literally. But, like, you know, say there's something like the kids' online safety bill, or like this bill in Washington that I mentioned that was, like, anti-trans, that Democrats passed because, like, oh, it's part of this long-standing strategy. Or in some other cases that they've passed, you know, bills like this because, oh, well, you know, we trust our Republican colleagues because they said they would give us some concessions on this and this. Like, that's not good politics. It shows the weakness of a country's democracy, not the strength of a politician. Parliament brawls, maybe, right? America has had parliament brawls in the past. We just don't have them very much anymore. And look, let's not kid ourselves. Parliament brawls or not, politics is absolutely a clown show. It's a meme for a reason, because it makes it look like a clown show and makes Parliament look weak and irresponsible. Parliaments are weak and irresponsible anyways. That's part and parcel to liberal democracy. You have to make it work where you can. And Democrats are, like, unwilling to do that, right? Like, say Democrats should be getting up to the podium and yelling that Republicans, like from the rooftops, yelling that Republicans are insurrectionists and they hate gay kids and they want to see your children die. If you're the parent of queer kids, Republicans want to see your children die. But those are uncivil arguments, so Democrats don't even engage in that much, right? Again, I'm not talking about throwing hands and cussing each other out. I'm talking about making true but uncivil and uncivilly phrased arguments that Republicans then have to respond to. Republicans are really bad at acting on the back foot. It may be a clown show, they may be weak, but it should at least be clear that they can work together. I actually don't think so when you're dealing with a fascist party, particularly. Now, in other circumstances, maybe there should be more of an emphasis on, like, well, obviously these parties can work together. And frequently in coalition government systems, that is the case, right? You see a country like Sweden, a country like France, a country like the Netherlands, with, you know, all the implications that has, that you have to make a coalition built on procedural compromise, right? If they can't even work with each other, how's that supposed to keep the country together? They already can't work with each other. The problem is Democrats can't admit that. Republicans can. They have no problem, like, in a two-party system, the parties shouldn't have to necessarily work with each other. That's kind of how a two-party system is set up. One party gets in power, they can basically do what they want. The other parties in power, they can basically do what they want. You know? Anyone who didn't know it yet, if you remember those French listening exercises, YGK speaks even faster when he's talking about something bad. Yeah, that's true. Look, a lot of people make the mistake of interpreting me being anti-civility politics as though I'm anti-compromise, which is not the same thing. And that's not something that I've said. Obviously, a degree of procedural and legislative compromise is necessary for something to pass, but that doesn't mean you have to be civil about it. I'll go up, like, politicians should absolutely be like, when there was a fascist party as one of the major parties, politicians should absolutely be out there insulting fascists for the insane things that they support. Republicans break these taboos and look at their voter base now. It literally is filled with people who screech and fuse, talk people on opposing view. That's not a product of them breaking the taboos. That's a product of their rhetoric on news cameras, right? Republicans are being uncivil about bad things. If you cultivate a base around those bad things, civil or not, it's going to yield the same results. Republicans were just as disgusting before Trump. I promise you that much. You know, it's, in fact, in some ways, it's almost more off-putting to have a Republican who's politely anti-gay than somebody who is like very loud and like weird about being anti-gay and stuff like that. Because it's like, oh, you know, God loves you anyways. Hopefully you can recover from your disease of being gay. Otherwise you'll burn in hell for all eternity. But they say it nice, so it's like socially justifiable or something. I just mean the social media divide now. Yeah, and I mean, like, okay. Again, I'm not talking about the interpersonal context here. Like, in the halls of Congress and whatever, like, when you're on the floor of the legislature, the primary concern shouldn't be being civil. Maybe that's a part of it to maintain a certain level of, I don't know, tact at one stage or another. But, like, you should be absolutely willing to engage in uncivil behavior, being like, look, you know, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, whatever, are fucking weirdos who hate gay and trans kids, and that's why they don't support bills like this, because that resonates with people. And the polite anti-gay Republican doesn't shoot up gay clubs? No, they don't shoot up gay clubs. They run the conversion centers. You see what I'm saying here? It's not the concept of being civil that I'm arguing against. It's the politics of being civil that I'm arguing against, right? It's like civility politics and civility are not the same thing. Politics should be a more formal environment for political debate. It would be anyways. That's not incompatible with politics that are uncivil, right? When I say uncivil, I just mean you're not being polite to each other, right? Which is perfectly normal on in a political stage. And I agree with you, you shouldn't suck Republican dick. Yeah, and like what I'm talking about, the civility politics, what I'm talking about here, fundamentally, that is sucking Republican dick. Being civil in certain contexts in politics is not the same as civility politics. Civility politics is the concept where you center your politics around the concept of being civil. Just don't be assholes either. Generally, no, but there are contexts where you need to be, and quite frankly, should be in politics. When you're on a floor debate, Tim Ryan a little while ago treaded very close to this line where it was like when people give impassioned speeches like talking shit about the other party, that does resonate with people. And even though Tim Ryan didn't really go full tilt this one time, there was a speech that he gave about dog, we're talking about something as simple as child tax credits and extra funding for, I don't know, it was something that should be relatively uncontroversial. And he's like, and we can't get bipartisanship. What the fuck? Are the Republicans asleep at the wheel or something? Throwing direct, although pretty mild shade at the Republicans. That resonated with people. And doing that enough actually in some cases resulted in Republicans losing ground. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ask hard questions or make strong arguments. But that's not the same as being civil. That is actually. Not asking strong questions or not making the strongest possible arguments that you can because the other side is your respected colleagues. That is what civility politics is. It's pulling your punches because you know that it wouldn't be nice to the other side to do that. That's what I'm taking issue with here, right? Republicans in Congress, right? They're insurrectionists. They're absolutely insane. They hate gay kids. They hate trans kids. And Democrats should be saying that. Like, should they use those exact words? I don't know, probably not. There's probably like some strategists out there that could phrase that in a better way than what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be afraid to name names, make the argument, and make your opponents look like bad people, because they are, you know? So when I say civility politics, what you mentioned there is kind of what I mean. That, like, there are strong arguments to be made and very tough questions to be asked, and Democrats are refraining from asking those questions, making those arguments, and in some cases even from campaigning on that, because it makes Republicans look worse than they would be comfortable with making them look, right? Sorry, those are really long discussions where relating to ordinary citizens and their concerns is distinct from military and ecclesiastical matter. Courteous and polite of time fixed by custom law rather than being natural or astronomical. Is that like definition of civility? Hold on, let me... Civility politics meaning. Yeah, here we go. To be civil in this political sense means to engage in a kind of politics, a type of political discourse that does not harm, injure, or offend fellow citizens. And that's from NCBI. I just want them to be professional. Yeah, and that's fine. I think, you know, being professional in politics is a good expectation to set, right? Having a professional attitude. But, you know, offend, that's going to be a tough cookie. Yeah, there we go. And that's what I mean by civility politics. Like, harm and injure, like, yeah, okay, sure, maybe don't do the whole Parliament brawl meme. That one might be not as good of an idea. But, like, civility politics is the structuring of political debate so as not to offend your political opponent, which you should absolutely be comfortable with doing, especially when, like, there's something as high stakes as, like, medical care on the line, or like, food assistance, or like infrastructure or something like that. You know, politics is the highest of high stakes that you can really engage in on, like, in human society. So you shouldn't really be like, now's not the time to pull punches and be like, well, I don't want to offend anybody. Nowadays, people get offended if you say your favorite color is green. That's true. That's pretty true. Item box, yes. Only red and blue are the correct answers. That's true. You're justified in being offended if somebody's favorite color is green. There are only two colors, red and blue. Everything else is mental illness. Paste. Yeah. So hopefully, I think we came to some consensus there about, like, politics, about what I mean by civility politics. You know, because Bernie Sanders does have to engage in civility politics to an extent, but he says things sometimes that are not very civil, like to Republicans and whoever else, right? Like, he'll say some shit like, Republicans want to cut your benefits, and that would make people's lives worse. And they are making people's lives worse. And, you know, he kind of stops short of, like, saying, and that makes them bad people or whatever. But, like, the implication is perfectly well hanging there, you know? And Bernie Sanders is one of the most popular politicians in America, if not the most popular, so... He's one of the smartest, too. I don't know why I did that. Get these out of here. 3 mushrooms. That's pretty good. Ah, 3 red shells. Wash your mouth, soap will bring you green spinning triple shell gift. Very true. Another red shell incoming. Ah, dang. I've been outplayed! Alright. Recently, some Irish girl was racist against me, which I found incredibly funny. Yeah. What'd she say? She say some shit about, like, oh, backwards Eastern European Soviet, haha. That's all I really know about European racism, is I know that Western Europeans are very racist against Eastern Europeans. Everybody's racist towards the Balkans. The Balkans are all racist towards each other, and everybody's also racist towards the Roma, like Romani. And then, of course, every country is racist against their neighbor, but, like, in a joking sort of way, until you get to Eastern Europe, in which case they hate each other's guts, like, a lot. She told me Lithuanian come to Ireland and do all the crime. Apparently she had some interactions with a Lithuanian criminal. That's actually funny as fuck. Like, we don't want your kind here. You committed all the crime, which means that I got mugged once by a Lithuanian guy, so I don't like you. Goddamn. Only racist to Venezuela, but that's technically also a neighbor. You're still correct after all. That's true. Yeah, that's right. There's a little that bit of Dutch. Wait, Dutch Guyana? No, wait. That was decolonized. You probably have an island possession that I'm not remembering right now. I sent her some data on how Ireland has several times the crime rate of Lithuania. True. Yeah, everybody makes jokes about haha Ireland car bomb. I think ultimately that, like, it's kind of a hard difference to gauge, but, like, ultimately the difference between genuine racism and, like, the joking haha fucking car bomb Romania steel car bomb joke, like, that, the difference between that and, like, genuine racism is really in, like, the tone of voice and the surrounding context, and, like, whether you can tell if they, like, if they actually mean it, or if they're just being like, haha, isn't this a funny, dumb meme or something. And honestly, it's a little bit similar in the U.S., like with race relations and stuff. Like where people, if people joke about like you know, Asian Americans or like Hispanic Americans or whatever the fuck. But things tend to be a little bit more touchy here. We go to Netherlands, do 100% of the crime based. In other news, new crime lord in the Netherlands, a local Lithuanian man, has done all of the crime. The crime rate has remained the same, but the number of criminals has dropped precipitously because now there's one guy and he does all of the crime. This is like his thing. Officials are currently very confused as to how he accomplished this. They are well, they may or may not be powerless to stop him. He has already grown too powerful. Yeah. I already did spying, remember? Oh yeah, that's true. Hey, item box in fourth. Yeah. Luigi! I recommend killing the political leaders in formation in Minecraft. That make us so upset. We get the king for free. That's so true. Ah, nice try. My understanding, the Mafia times here were very peaceful. Really? That's interesting. Just past our average for the time duration of the formation, if I'm not mistaken. Huh. few missing reporters here and there. Yeah. And politicians. Yeah, that's seems about right for the mafia. Um, here we go. I think that's all the Mario Kart I can handle right now. But what I wanted to do, and the people who didn't pay him, yeah, okay. Yeah, sounds about right. What I wanted to do was something like this. We're just gonna have Mario Kart music playing in the background, but I'm gonna bring up the React Andy window. I'm gonna fill the screen with it. There's zero crime on the street a mafia person lived. Yeah, and you know the reasons for that is kind of complicated, but what it boils down to, there we go, is essentially okay. Essentially, what the mafia do, like how they work, is that they kind of replace certain state functions. They would get tortured to death. Yeah, the mafia is like a much more brutal version of the state. When you tend to get a lot of mafia-related crime is where there's not a lot of positive resource like development or whatever from the state, where there's not a lot of positive presence, where like the income level's really low, where there's not a lot of education, where like basically where states have left people behind is where the mafia tends to appear. Like Russia nowadays? Yeah, like Russia. Or even like in the United States, in the poorer parts of a lot of cities, you get a mafia presence or a gang presence or something, and that's because that like people are unable to get help from the state, either at the local level or the municipal, state, or federal level, so they have to resort to other more extreme means, and in some cases that means forming a gang, and stuff like that. The mafia isn't the official government, unlike Russia. Well, in Russia, the thing is, right, the government is the government. But the mafia in Russia, we just call it that because it's just that's just how capitalism works. You know how like in Russia they have all the people that we call oligarchs, and how like you could get disappeared and whatever. That's pretty typical of an authoritarian state, but we don't use that language for other authoritarian states. You know, the oligarchs, the people that we call the mafia bosses, the oligarchs in Russia, they're just businessmen. That's really it. Mafia, the mafia is just like a much more undisguised version of like what every business does around the world. You know, like the extortion, racketeering, the exploitation, or whatever. They just have slippery windows in Russia. Yes, well, of course. You're more prone to fall out the window, you see, in Russia, especially if you say something bad about Putin. I hear it's bad luck. You know, because and that's because like there are certain elements of a state that are exploitative. And those same elements exist, but like amped up to 11 in the mafia. The mafia basically tries to fill a power vacuum that the state has left behind. In Russia, the state is such that it's authoritarian and kind of resembles a mafia a little bit more closely. But in the West, where the states have a much more pronounced nominal commitment to like a public safety, like social safety net or whatever, then the mafia appears where the holes are in that safety net. Sometimes Novichok Grass spawns around his political opponents. That's true. He's spawn camping, or like the opposite of spawn camping. He's cheating. He's using scripts. What do I do to make this? It's like, yeah, there we go. It's alt click. Okay, so now I can show the whole window, right? Yes. Perfect. We're going to look at class warfare. That's what we're going to do. All right? I saw, you know, the context for this. The context for this is that I saw a video recently, very interesting video, about Roman elections. You know, Rome was a republic and it had elections for Senate and whatever, and they weren't well, they weren't very democratic, you know. But the competing interests were very interesting to me, like all the feuding clans and the families and the tribes and the whatever, and then you had the peasants, you know, the plebeians. Love talking about USA, Russia, China, Netherlands, Lithuania, but Wouldn't complain if some small island makes world news with some ultimate weapon or reincarnated Napoleon. You feel me? Yeah, for sure. It's just like the reason we talk about the big countries so much is because they're big and they have all that influence. And like you said, something really extraordinary would have to happen for like a lot of for something to come out of like a small country, you know? Anyways, the big countries like Lithuania. That's true. I mean, relatively speaking, Lithuania is wealthier than a lot of other countries. So, like, even if we don't, I don't hear about it that often in my newsfeed, you do hear about it every now and again. All right. My favorite subject as a socialist, you see. We have like 3 million people. The reason we talk about big countries is because they're big. Yeah, it sounds dumb, but that's genuinely the reason why. They're big and they're influential. Class conflict. 18 million? You fools! There are 340 million people in my country. Get owned. This is now a nationalist live stream. Anyways. In political science, the term class conflict or class struggle refers to the political tension and economic antagonism that exists among the social classes of society. Because of socioeconomic competition for resources among the political classes between the rich and the poor. We're literally far bigger than you. Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot. Everything actually belongs to Lithuania. So the population of Lithuania is actually 7 billion. Everyone knows those 330 million or whatever. Too good at this point. Yeah, that's true. The political economic philosophies of Karl Marx and Mikhail Bakunin. They have a picture of Bakunin. Cool. Class struggle is a central tenet and practical means of effecting radical socio-political changes for the social majority of the working class. Basically, Marx and Bakunin said the working class needs to work together within itself because, rich people are all working together for their own interests. Poor people need to work together for their interests. We own all life. We were all water after we had unification with the North Sea. Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah, Lithuania owns all the land, and then the Netherlands owns all the water. That's true. Forms of class conflict include direct violence, such as wars, for access to and control of natural resources and labor, assassinations, and revolution. Hey, we were talking about assassinations just a little bit ago. Indirect violence, such as death from poverty and starvation, illness and unsafe working conditions, economic coercion, such as the threat of unemployment and capital flight, the withdrawal of investment capital, and ideologically by way of political literature. Yes. Okay. So, actually, to draw another parallel to earlier, a lot of the more direct conflict, the more direct violence, that's the kind of stuff you would see mafias doing. But indirect violence is stuff that you see a lot of more legitimate states doing. And the reason that the narrative sells really well that like Russia is a mafia state is because they engage in both of these. They engage in a lot more of the direct violence as well. I just invent a new anti-Dutch slur. Weed people. That's true. New slur detected. Be careful with that one. You'll get banned from Twitch for being racist against Dutch people. I would know. I'm the most professional racist. I know how to avoid Twitch bans, you see. Usage. Ah, yes. In political science, socialists and Marxists, hey, that's me, use the term class conflict to define a social class by its relationship to the means of production, factories, agricultural land, and machinery. Okay. The social control of labor and the production of goods and services is a political contest between the social classes. I did get banned for being anti-Latvian already. Wait, really? That's funny as fuck. Mikhail Bakunin, who was an anarchist, said the class struggles of the working class, the peasantry, and the working poor were central to realizing a social revolution to depose and replace the ruling class, the creation of libertarian socialism. If this seems like a contradiction, it really isn't. Libertarianism was originally a very left-wing ideology, hence libertarian socialism. But then, rightoids co-opted that to mean, like, actually libertarianism is when no Department of Education and, like, no Department of Social Security and no Health and Human Services and everything is corporations all the time. Fucking hate libertarian weirdos. even though I am technically a libertarian weirdo because I'm a socialist. Anyways, Marx's theory of history proposes that class conflict is decisive in the history of economic systems organized by hierarchies of social class, such as capitalism and feudalism. Marxists refer to its overt manifestations as class war, a struggle whose resolution in favor of the working class is viewed by them as inevitable under the plutocratic capitalism. So basically, we've got there's just like there are different classes in hierarchical societies, and they're struggling against each other uh, because it's between them it's a competition over resources and stuff. And the rich don't like the poor because they have different interests, and the poor don't like the rich because they have different interests. And to realize a victory for the poors, they all have to work together, is what Marx and Bakunin both agree on. But in throughout history, there have been different classes. It hasn't always been like the capitalist class conflict and stuff. That's just the most recent version, right? Right now we have the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class, and then you have the working class, right? But through different systems, you have different versions of that dynamic, where you have the rich people on top and the poor people on the bottom, and some different subsets in there. So in ancient Greece, there was oligarchs and commoners, where societies are socially divided based on status, wealth, or control of social production and distribution. Class structures arise and thus evolve within civilization itself. I don't know what that word means, but okay, sure. They exist. It's been well documented since at least European classical antiquity, such as the conflict of orders and Spartacus. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Conflict of orders in Rome, and Spartacus led a slave revolt against the slave owners. It was like the slaves versus the slavers. Thucydides, in his history, this is where the word history comes from. This guy just wrote a book called History. Thucydides describes a civil war in the city of Corcyra between the pro-Athens party of the common people and their pro-Corinth oligarchic opposition. Near the climax of the struggle, the oligarchs in full rout, fearing the victorious commons might assault and carry the arsenal and put them to the sword, fired the houses around the marketplace and the lodging houses in order to bar their advance. Huh. The historian Tacitus would later recount a similar class conflict in the city of Seleucia, in which disharmony between the oligarchs and commoners would typically lead to each side calling on outside help to defeat the other. Talking too much Dutch starts to catch up with me. Romans loved Lithuania, by the way. Did they? That's interesting. Thucydides believed that as long as poverty gives men the courage of necessity, so long will the impulse never be wanting to drive men into danger. Okay, so as long as poverty can drive people to do desperate things, people will do those desperate things, even if it puts them in danger. Because, class conflict. They want to realize their interests. Tacitus visited us, I think. Oh, wow, that's cool. There are a lot of Romans that actually did pretty cool ethnographies that still exist in some ways. Aristotle. In the Politics, this is where the word politics comes from. Aristotle just wrote a book called Politics. Aristotle describes the basic dimensions of class war. Again, because the rich are generally few in number while the poor are many, they appear to be antagonistic, and as the one or the other prevails, they form the government. Aristotle also commented that poverty is the parent of revolution, but did not consider poverty to be the only cause of revolution. In a society where property is distributed equally throughout the community, the nobles will be dissatisfied because they think themselves worthy of more than an equal share of honors, and this is often found to be a cause of sedition and revolution. So basically, oh wow, that's actually really cool. So This might actually be where Lenin got his ideas about how revolutions happen. Lenin talked about like revolutionary situations where it's like, oh yeah, poverty's worse than usual, other forms of oppression are worse than usual, people are more aware than usual, and like there's more agitation than usual based on that awareness. Like when you meet those certain conditions, poverty being one of them, then it like revolution's possible. And Aristotle's saying something pretty similar. All of philosophy builds on each other. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I just didn't know that, like, before reading this, I didn't know that like it went back this far. The like class conflict. That's actually really familiar. And he says that like as long as there's poverty, as long as there's poverty, poor people will be dissatisfied. And if you fix poverty, then the nobles will be dissatisfied because they'll want there to be poverty so they can be better than everybody. God damn. Unfortunately, Aristotle did say that it was wrong for the poor to seize the wealth of the rich and divide it amongst themselves, but he did say also that it is wrong for the rich to impoverish the multitude. Ah, so he's a social democrat. I see. No fucking way, he's a third positionist. Moreover, Aristotle further described a middle way between laxity and cruelty in the treatment of slaves by their masters, averring that if not kept at hand, slaves are insolent and think that they are as good as their masters, and if harshly treated, they hate and conspire against them. Well, average Athenian philosopher, I guess. So yeah, a very cringe pro-slavery take, but this is a useful description of class conflict. Socrates. This was I don't think we should enforce modern political concepts on ancient peoples. I do, because I'm not a moral relativist. Fuck that. Slavery was bad, and people knew as much even back then. That's why there were slave revolts even back then. You know, Spartacus and all that. People have been pretty consistent insofar as what we're able to identify as good or bad things throughout history. I meant the social democrat thing. I was mostly joking when I said that. Like, social democracy and third positionism weren't really concepts back then because, you know, like you said, the property relations here are very different than the property relations now. Like, this was a more feudal or slavocratic system, right? Like, the property relations for a social democrat to really be a thing weren't possible. It's just a funny joke because I'm poking fun at social democrats. Socrates. This was not Aristotle's teacher, but his teacher's teacher. Aristotle was a student of Plato, and Plato was a student of Socrates. Um, Socrates was the first Greek philosopher to describe class warfare. In The Republic by Plato, Socrates said that any city, however small, is in fact divided into two. One, the city of the poor, the other, the city of the rich. This divide is actually still visible in most cities today. These cities are at war with one another. Socrates disapproved of oligarchies in which members of a small class of wealthy property owners take positions of political power in order to dominate the large social class of impoverished commoners, and used the analogy of a maritime pilot who, like the power holder in a polis just means city, ought to be chosen for political office for his skill, not for the amount of property he owns. This is actually very reminiscent. It's a very simple description of class conflict, but it's very reminiscent of what we see today. Like the people on top in cities, property owners, and the people on the bottom, propertyless. It's just that I think the kind of property changes over time and how you're able to manage it or use it, or in some cases not use it. Plutarch. The historian Plutarch recounts how the Greek people anticipated the class warfare between the aristocrats and the common folk. Financially oppressed by their indebtedness to the aristocrats. Yeah, that's right. A lot of politics revolves around debt, or especially did back in the day. The mass of Athenians chose Solon to be the lawgiver to lead them to freedom from their creditors. The philosopher George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, that was Marx's teacher, said that Solon's constitution of the Athenian Popular Assembly created a political sphere that balanced the competing socioeconomic interests of the social classes of Athens, of which there were three: the wealthy aristocratic party of the plain, the poor common party of the mountains, and the moderate party of the coast. Ah, okay. You know what? This is really interesting. This is the first time I'm seeing like the feudal class dynamic emerge, which would later become the capitalist class dynamic. The what Hegel's describing here, the wealthy aristocrats, these are the feudal lords or the noble lords or whatever. And then you have the commoners in the mountain. So this is the beginning of the Greek debt crisis? That's true. Actually, no. The Greek debt crisis began when the concept of Greek and Greece began. So it was actually before this. You have the landowners, like the aristocrats. You have the commoners, the property lists, the laborers. And then the moderate party of the coast, I think, are the merchants. This is the group that would eventually become like the capitalist class, right? Because they made their living by selling things, you know, or by trading rather. It might not be it's not a direct one-to-one, but this was the class dynamic actually that you saw in the French Revolution, where you had the peasantry included the burghers. That began when the movie Grease came out. Who would go to the country when you got the movie? Ah, that's true. That's true. Persians weren't actually trying to conquer Greece; they just wanted to get the money they lent back. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. You know, I think on two fronts, it wouldn't have made sense for Persia to conquer Greece. For one, if they would have, if they wanted to, they probably would have. But then on another level, it was probably like not very administratively feasible to conquer Greece because of how far it was from like the imperial core. But you know, debts are a really important thing in economics. You know, Greece wasn't paying up, so they went and invaded. Like, hey, pay up, because it's like an investment that they're not delivering on. Anyways, I've rambled enough about how interesting this is that this class dynamic came up this early on. I mean, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Participating in a war amongst the social classes of ancient Greece was a dangerous political endeavor. In the book Parallel Lives, Plutarch reported that the king Agis of Sparta said that being desirous to raise the people and to restore the noble and just form of government, now long fallen into disuse, he incurred the hatred of the rich and powerful, who could not endure to be deprived of the selfish enjoyment to which they were accustomed. To raise the oh, okay. So because he wanted to do like agrarian justice in government, like he wanted to he was a populist, and because he wanted to bring like populist policy into government, rich and powerful people hate him. That is King Agis of Sparta. And of course, in some ways, when we're talking about these classes, it's a pretty limited group even still. A lot of the times when they talk about political struggles here, most of the people being included are the ethnic majority and like men, right? So that's mostly who they're talking about, I think. Although it's possible with stuff like Spartacus, right? With slave revolts, I don't doubt that they would be talking about all, like everybody, ethnic minorities, foreigners, women, you know, as well as the men that usually like ancient politics are centered more around. So that was Greece. You had the oligarchs and the commoners. Here in Rome, there was the patricians and the plebeians. It was similarly difficult for the Romans to maintain peace between the upper class, the patricians, and the lower class, the plebs. French Enlightenment philosopher Montesquieu noted that this conflict intensified after the overthrow of the Roman monarchy. Yeah, that's right. Rome used to be like a monarchy, sort of under the like loose Etrurian, like Ravenna Confederation. We'd probably know them as the Etruscans. Basically, what's now Tuscany. There was like an alliance of, or like coalition or whatever of a bunch of city-states. It returned to monarchy again later on. Yeah, that's right. It became an empire after that. It was like there was the monarchy, then the monarchy was overthrown, and they had the republic. And then after the republic, they had the empire. which was, again, a kind of monarchy. In the spirit of laws, he lists the four main grievances of the plebs, which were rectified in the years following the deposition of King Tarquin. Ah, the prequel to the Communist Manifesto, you see. It's not the Communist Manifesto, but it is a political manifesto. I think we should decide our leaders by how much wolf tit milk they can suck out. Ancient Rome walking in, boy, howdy, do we have the proposition for you. That would be based. Also very weird, but still based and funny. Therefore based. The patricians had much too easy access to the positions of public service. The Constitution granted the consuls far too much political power. Ah, okay. Highest elected public official for the Roman Republic. Cursus honorum, sending public offices. Two. The plebs were constantly verbally slighted, and the plebs had too little power in their assemblies. Okay, so you have this part, and then the basically the president had too much power. That's interesting that they were getting this deep into it, and then plebs being verbally slighted. Yeah, huh. Yeah, okay. I guess plebs, plebs doing all the work, them and the slaves, they don't appreciate, the nobility talking shit all the time. Camillus. What Camillus have to say? The Senate had the ability to give a magistrate the power of dictatorship, meaning they could bypass the public law in the pursuit of a prescribed mandate. This is also the origin of the concept of dictatorship in the modern day. Montesquieu explains that the purpose of this institution was to tilt the balance of power in favor of the patricians. Dude, it's always been like this. Authoritarianism is always the go-to method for fucking property owners to like circumvent any advance that the lower class makes. Like, I have ranted several times about how like fascism is capitalism in decay, right? The like class consciousness is increasing, whatever the fuck, and they like retreat into authoritarianism to protect their own property interests. This is the same shit. It's been happening all the time. God damn. However, in an attempt to resolve a conflict between the patricians and the plebs, the dictator Camillus used his power of dictatorship to coerce the Senate into giving the plebs the right to choose one of the two consuls. Wait, what? Never mind. Contextually based authoritarian moment? What? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it. They gave the dictatorship is the way to go then. This is the real dictatorship of the proletariat. If you elect a proletarian as the dictator, yeah, tankies will be proud. Fucking Camillus is their boy. Yeah, okay, that's cool. So he's like, I'll do you one better. The plebs get to elect a consul. Shit, all right. Um, yeah, wow. Yeah, this is directly a backfire of the intention of this thing. Like, the like described intent of this system of dictatorship would be to tip the balance of power in favor of the property owners, which it does really. Like anybody who's likely to be able to like ascend to a position of political power to even do authoritarian things in the first place would have a bias towards property owners and their interests. But in this case, they found the one guy with a conscience. He was like, I'm about to end this man's whole career. You know, this is like the Republicans making Sanders dictator on accident. Yeah, it kind of is. This is Roman Peronism. This is Peronism. Peronist praxis. All right, Marius. Mario. Tacitus believed that the increase in Roman power spurred the patricians to expand their power over more and more cities. This process, he felt, exacerbating pre-existing class tensions with the plebs, and eventually culminated in a civil war between the patrician Sulla and the populist reformer Marius. Marius had taken the step of enlisting capitacensi. What does this mean? The lowest class of citizens in ancient Rome. People not of the nobility or the middle classes. Interesting. The term in Latin means those counted by head. Oh yeah, censi, like census, and then cap, like you wear a cap on your head. Also known as the head count, they owned little to no property, so they were counted by the head rather than by the property they owned. Huh. So this guy Marius wanted to allow the propertyless citizens of Rome into the army, for the first time allowing non-landowners into the legions. Honestly, this is a smart geopolitical move too. Like, this makes people want to enlist in the military. If like now you have the right to, like, holy shit, this might have been one of the things that put Rome on the map as a military power. You know. Now we got Tiberius, Tiberius Gracchus. Of all the notable figures discussed by Plutarch and Tacitus, agrarian reformer Tiberius Gracchus may have most challenged the upper classes and most championed the cause of the lower classes. In a speech to the common soldiery, he decried their lowly conditions. The savage beasts, said he, in Italy, have their particular dens. Then having slaves took away all the power from the people. Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. That's true. Like, obviously there's still like this the slave system and all that. Um but this was like a progression that wasn't present in a lot of other societies that were like recognizable as states. Like I remember reading in one of my archaeology classes that the Etrurians to the north, like the Ravenna, were comparatively very aristocratic, and like even if they were egalitarian, wasn't like 2/3 of Rome's population slaves? Yes, it was, and that's like it is really bad, pretty cringe, gotta say. Um, but it's like, in addition to having a lot of slaves, a lot of the small states around Rome also didn't let free commoners to enlist in the military, and didn't give foreigners a path to citizenship. Something that I think would probably come up later on, like if they're talking about Rome. And even in Rome, slaves theoretically had a path out of slavery and into citizenship. Which again, slavery is still slavery, but there were like some comparative benefits in Rome that didn't exist in some of the other states around them, that made them a lot better poised to sort of capitalize on like, well, just to capitalize on like saying, hey, you maybe you're not a part of us right now, but theoretically you could be. You know, like, that's a powerful motivator. Um, the savage beasts in Italy have their particular dens. They have their places of repose and refuge. But the men who bear arms and expose their lives for the safety of their country enjoy in the meantime nothing more but in the air and light, and having no houses or settlements of their own, are constrained to wander from place to place with their wives and children. Okay. So these soldiers that were just mentioned by Marius up here is now like Tiberius is now advocating on behalf of these people. Huh. Following this observation, he remarked that these men fought indeed and were slain, but it was to maintain the luxury and wealth of other men. Cicero, uh, okay, Roman politician, cool, believed that Tiberius Gracchus' reforming efforts saved Rome from tyranny, arguing Tiberius Gracchus, says Cicero, caused the free men to be admitted into the tribes, not by the force of his eloquence. Wait, the tribes? Tribus was the division of the Roman people or military. Oh, okay. It was like, all right. not by the force of his eloquence, but by a word, by a gesture, which had he not affected, the republic, whose drooping head we are at present scarce able to uphold, would not even exist. Huh. So this was in the days where like the republicanism in Rome was like decaying, and authoritarianism was becoming a lot more prominent, and like they were leaning into the stuff that favored the property classes more and more. And he was like, well, hold on. Tiberius Gracchus weakened the power of the Senate by changing the law so that judges were chosen from the ranks of the knights instead of their social superiors in the senatorial class. Oh yeah, Rome apparently, I think Rome had like a shit ton of classes within classes. Like there's property owners, but then like the kind of property, gotta go. Yeah, no problem. Have a good one. It's like the kind of property you owned and how much affected your social status and how much political influence you had. Have a good day. See you later. Later. Have fun. Julius Caesar. Ah. Contrary to Shakespeare's depiction of Julius Caesar in the tragedy Julius Caesar, the historian Michael Parenti, this is a contemporary historian, has argued that Caesar was a populist, not a tyrant. In 2003, the New Press published Parenti's The Assassination of Julius Caesar, A People's History of Ancient Rome. Publishers Weekly said Parenti narrates a provocative story of the late Republic in Rome from 100 to 33 BCE to demonstrate that Caesar's death was the culmination of growing class conflict, economic disparity, and political corruption. Huh. Kirkus Reviews wrote, populist historian Parenti views ancient Rome's most famous assassination not as a tyrannicide, but as a sanguinary scene in the never-ending drama of class warfare. So he's effectively arguing that, like, Caesar, while authoritarian, was like a populist and a reformer for the peasantry, and the reason that all the other senators killed him is because he was going against their property interests. Dude, I gotta read that. There's a lot of shit that I gotta read. That was a lot more. You know what? I think I'm gonna stop right before Adam Smith, because from there it's like mostly stuff that we're familiar with. I might continue this later. We'll go through the Enlightenment era. So we're almost there. Coriolanus. Anus. It says anus in his name. The patrician Coriolanus, whose life William Shakespeare would later depict in the tragic play Coriolanus, fought on the other side of the class war, for the patricians and against the plebs. When grain arrived to relieve a serious shortage in the city of Rome, remember, grain back in the day was not just the means by which you made bread, it was also money. It wasn't because he was so authoritarian the senators were scared of losing their power. Something like that. He was authoritarian, but he was also not using his authoritarian power to exclusively like to benefit the property class in Rome. He was using it for the benefit of like the low class of like soldiers or something. It's been a while since I read on Julius Caesar. But yeah. So it wasn't because of the corruption. They would have been fine with the corruption if it was serving their interests. But the problem for them was that the corruption was serving the interests of the poor and the property list. So yeah, I guess they were scared of losing some of their power. I bet he did fund his own army. Oh yeah, he probably did, as is the case with many famous generals in sort of that era of history. It's probably what made people love him so much. Let's see. When grain arrived to relieve a serious shortage in the city of Rome, the plebs made it known that they felt it ought to be divided amongst them as a gift. But Coriolanus stood up in the Senate against this idea on the grounds that it would empower the plebs at the expense of the patricians. Literally just saying, hey, wait, giving grain to the plebs would benefit the plebs and wouldn't necessarily benefit us. So you should give it to us instead, because that would benefit us and not the plebs. Dog. This decision would eventually contribute to Coriolanus' undoing when he was impeached following a trial by the tribunes of the plebs. That's funny as fuck. Hey, wait, don't give the grain to the poor people. That would help the poor people and not us, the rich people. The poor people judges slowly fucking turning their heads to look at him. Goddamn. Montesquieu recounts how Coriolanus castigated the tribunes for trying a patrician. You know what this is? Oh fuck! This is civility politics. This is respectability politics. Respectability politics and civility politics are like, I should have probably used the term respectability politics. This is Coriolanus saying that, like, how dare my political opponents try me, a person of dignity and status, right? Like, trying to use that as a shield against a legitimate political grievance that they're trying to levy, however uncivilly, against him. When in his mind, no one but a consul had that right, although a law had been passed stipulating that all appeals affecting the life of a citizen had to be brought before the plebs. So, and not even doing the civility politics bit very effectively, but this is an example of that. In the first scene of Shakespeare's Coriolanus, a crowd of hungry plebs gathers in Rome to denounce Coriolanus as the, quote, chief enemy to the people and a very dog to the commonalty, while the leader of the mob speaks out against the patricians thusly. They ne'er cared for us yet, suffer us to famish, and their storehouses crammed with grain, make edicts for usury to support usurers, repeal daily any wholesome act established against the rich, and provide more piercing statutes daily, chain up and restrain the poor. If the wars eat us not up, they will, and there's all the love they bear for us. Huh. Also, when Shakespeare says usury, he probably just means the Jews. Probably, but the rest of this is pretty cool. Landlessness and debt. Ah, yes. Okay, so I mentioned debt earlier. And you mentioned debt as well. Persia wanted to enforce those debts on Greece, and that's why they invaded. Enlightenment era historian Edward Gibbon might have agreed with this narrative of the Roman class conflict. In the third volume of the History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, he relates the origins of the struggle. Really, there were Enlightenment people that also agree with this? That's actually really interesting that this narrative is that old. That, like, maybe it just really was like that. You know, a lot gets left out of contemporary histories of these ancient empires. Maybe this is why Christianity spread so quickly in Rome, because usury ban. That is absolutely what, like, one of the reasons why Christianity spread so quickly in Rome. The usury, but then also I was joking about the Persia stuff. No, I mean, but that does make sense, right? What the big reason that Christianity spread across the Roman Empire is because of the forbidding usury, generally egalitarian message otherwise, and because of the debt forgiveness. In the Bible, there are actually several passages about forgive the debts as we forgive the debtors and stuff like that. That probably appealed to a lot of people who were landless and indebted. Join our religion. We will help you purge your debts, and you will be a free person as long as you live a holy life, or something like that. That has a massive appeal to people. The plebeians of Rome had been oppressed from the earliest times by the weight of debt and usury, and the husbandman, during the term of his military service, was obliged to abandon the cultivation of his farm. The lands of Italy, which had been originally divided amongst the families of free and indigent proprietors, were insensibly purchased or usurped by the avarice of the nobles. And in the age which preceded the fall of the Republic, it was computed that only 2,000 citizens were possessed of an independent substance. So there was just this massive upward concentration of wealth. Wealth was transferred, like, upward and upward until in the entire Roman Republic, only 2,000 citizens had, like, any substantial kind of property. What was the population of the Roman Republic? Classical demography. That's for the Roman Empire. So they're estimating the Roman Empire had something like 50 million people, which is all this. I mean, I guess if you just divide, if we were to go on vibes, that probably means about like, that means at least a few million people in Italy alone. So 2,000 out of like more than a million, like a couple million. That's not very many. Hegel similarly states that the severity of the patricians, uh, their creditors, the debts due to whom it says about 1 million during Republic. Okay, yeah, so that's a very, very small portion of the population that had like property. Hegel similarly states that the severity of the patricians, their creditors, the debts due to whom they had to discharge by slave. What the fuck? Am I having a stroke reading this? Well, it is Hegel, so drove the plebs to revolts. Let me cut this part out. It's the population of Rome, the city during the Republic. Okay, so the entire like Italian, the entire Republic would probably have like at least 2 or 3 times that many people, right? Like this, there's more cities in the Republic than that. So even smaller portion, huh? Okay, the patricians are the creditors, and they're very severe. And then the plebs owed them a lot of debts, and drove the plebs into debt slavery. And then that made the plebs mad enough to revolt, I think is what Hegel is saying there. Okay. Gibbon also explained how Augustus facilitated this class warfare by pacifying the plebs with actual bread and circuses. Yeah, that's right. The economist Adam Smith noted that the poor freeman's lack of land provided a major impetus for Roman colonization as a way to relieve class tensions at home between the rich and the landless poor. Again, 2/3 were slaves with no property. Yeah, that's true. Hegel described the same phenomenon happening in the impetus to Greek colonization. Huh. You know what's funny? America did the same thing, and it fucking worked. That's why, you know what? That's probably why Greece, Rome, and America have been so influential in their times, is because of the project of homesteading. Ooh, man, giving the propertyless or the the poor citizenry, at least in some part, a promise of being able to make it, being able to be one of the high rolling like landowners. Of course, at the expense of indigenous populations with America and Rome and Greece. Huh. Adam Smith W, I guess. Enlightenment era. Writing in pre-capitalist Europe, the Swiss philosophe Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Hey, we know this guy, Rousseau. Um, and the Federalist statesman James Madison across the Atlantic Ocean made significant remarks on the dynamic of class struggle. This is the last section, I promise. I'm not going to read the like capitalist society bit because we know that part already for the most part. Later, German idealist George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel would also contribute his perspective to the discussion around class conflict between employers and employees. Okay. Where's the Russian? Lenin, you mean? That's in the capitalist societies. This is all before Marx was even writing. Um, yeah, down here is when you get to the Soviet Union because that's like 20th century stuff. Rousseau. Oh, no, this is French. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He's Swiss. Swiss French. Oh, yeah, okay, I get it. Victor. Rousseau's not a very nice name for the Russians. That's true. SMH. Yeah, that's true. Well, in classic fashion, me being the best racist, of course, I have to also be racist against Russians. I have a reputation to maintain. So our boy, Mr. Ruski, it was with bitter sarcasm that Rousseau outlined the class conflict prevailing in his day between masters and their workmen. You have need of me because I am rich and you are poor. We will therefore come to an arrangement. I will permit you to have the honor of serving me, on the condition that you bestow upon me the little you have left, in return for the pains I shall take to command you. Holy shit. That's basically how it is nowadays. Except, well, no, you know what? This is actually a slightly different dynamic. This is actually a different dynamic than modern capitalism, right? Because the bosses, like capitalism, a lot of times doesn't really operate on bosses anymore. Like your boss directly usually isn't a member of the owning class. It's just a manager, right? Who it might be themselves working class, but like they have to do what the manager above them says. And there's way more layers, you know? And then the board, like half the time, the board doesn't even, the board of directors and like the high up executives don't communicate directly to the workers. They have no direct contact with them. This is like, well, I guess this is a feudal system that he's talking about here. Rousseau argued that the most important task of any government is to fight class warfare on the side of the workmen against their masters. Based, he's a state socialist. He's a market socialist. I don't know. It's hard to describe his ideology. I think he's just a liberal, for the most part. We said engaged in exploitation under the pretense of serving society. Specifically, he believed that governments should actively intervene in the economy to abolish poverty and prevent the accrual of too much wealth in the hands of too few men. This is actually textbook social democracy, because he's one of the liberal thinkers of the Enlightenment, and this would be pretty substantially on the left wing of the like Enlightenment movements. This is actually super interesting. A lot of social democrats take this attitude that, we should have still this liberal style of government, but the job of the government should be to actively intervene wherever possible on behalf of the workers, right? To prevent as much exploitation as possible. Of course, there are pitfalls with that, but it's interesting nonetheless, I think. And of course, the pitfalls of that are that, like, ultimately the intent of a system is not its actual intent, but rather the outcomes it produces. The design of a Why do leftists hate the Enlightenment philosophers? Do they? I don't know that many who hate the Enlightenment philosophers. I'm critical of some of them because they're liberals, but they have some very valuable ideas to pick from. If there is a section of leftists that hate Enlightenment philosophers, I have a feeling those leftists would be like tankies. Tankies are a group of people that frequently hate on Enlightenment philosophers. You know. Yeah. Oh well, here's an Enlightenment. You've seen a few on Twitch, really? I don't know why. I don't know. My first instinct would be to say that they're tankies, but I'm not entirely sure on that front. I mean, here's an Enlightenment philosopher who is very easy to hate, Thomas Jefferson. But then you also have people, well, unfortunately, they're not mentioned here. You also have people like Thomas Paine and Rousseau saying stuff like this, stuff that's very easily like very easy stuff to get behind. Hassan heads probably. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, Hassan has some very tanky-esque tendencies. God, it's so hard to determine whether or not he's like a proper tanky. I mean, I know he is when it comes to China, but like for stuff like Russia, he's a little bit more moderate. I don't know. He's Hassan is what he is, and I don't trust his shit ton of tanky friends too. Yeah. Anyway, Thomas Jefferson, probably my least favorite Enlightenment thinker if I had to pick one. Thomas Jefferson led the U.S. as president from 1801 to 1809, considered as one of the founding fathers. Regarding the interaction between social classes, he wrote, I'm convinced that those societies as the Indians, which live without government, enjoy in their general mass an infinitely greater degree of happiness than those who live under European governments. Among the former, public opinion is in the place of law, and restrains morals as powerfully as laws ever did anywhere. Basically, there's common law. What he's referring to is just like an unwritten code of law, or like social norms that function as law. Among the latter, under pretense of governing, they have divided their nations into two classes, wolves and sheep. I do not exaggerate. This is a true picture of Europe. Cherish, therefore, the spirit of our people and keep alive their attention. Do not be too severe upon their errors, but reclaim them by enlightening them. If once they become inattentive to become public affairs, you and I and Congress and assemblies, judges and governors shall all become wolves. It seems to be the law of our general nature, in spite of individual exceptions, and experience declares that man is the only animal which devours his own kind, for I can apply no milder term to the governments of Europe and to the general prey of the rich on the poor. Huh. So he's outlining here the tendency of the liberal institutions that him and his contemporary philosophers designed. He's describing that these systems will inevitably turn into the rich devouring the poor. We had that too before we made the first statutus in the Middle Ages, which is kind of like an early version of the Constitution. Yeah, it's like with yeah, I get you. The thing about the Indians here, what he's describing, the Indians were like they were tribal non-state societies. So there was no like they didn't have a concept of written law. It's not like written law was something that you took away from them. They no longer had. It's that they didn't they didn't. It just wasn't a thing. And he's describing a system which is much more egalitarian. We were tribal up until recently too. Yeah, there's a lot of places that are, that were like that until pretty recently. Obviously, my thoughts on Thomas Jefferson is that he's a hypocrite and a slaver and all that, but like this is a good point to make here. It does miss a couple of things, like, oh, people need to be educated and pay proper attention. I don't think that's a good enough defense mechanism against the tendency that he describes for liberal governments or even just more developed states in general to serve the interests of the property class against the interests of the propertyless. Like, we've seen that. Like, governments always have done this from the time of ancient Greece and ancient Rome onwards. Like, this is already 2,000 years after the collapse of the Roman Empire and then some. And they're still, like, we still haven't, or Thomas Jefferson hadn't learned that lesson. So the 13th century is when we first got, when we got the first state. Okay, I got you. James Madison. In his Federalist number 10, James Madison revealed an emphatic concern with the conflict between rich and poor, commenting that the most common and durable source of factions has been the various and unequal distribution of property. Those who hold and those who are without property have ever formed distinct interests in society. Those who are creditors and those who are debtors fall under a like discrimination. This is just him repeating the same thing. Creditors are the people with property, debtors are those without. He welcomed class-based factions into political life as a necessary result of political liberty. That's interesting. Stating that the most important task of government was to manage and adjust for the spirit of party. So basically acting as a mediator. This is a very similar thing to what Aristotle said, was basically to be a middle party between the interests of the poor and the interests of the rich. So far, a lot of philosophers have taken that stance, and I don't agree with it on both fronts, both descriptively and prescriptively. It doesn't make that much sense, because we've seen governments consistently favor the interests of the property class, right? Just as a matter of descriptive tendencies. And then prescriptively, it doesn't make sense to in any way maintain that distinction of rich and poor. You want society to be egalitarian to resolve that class conflict. You don't want to mediate it, you want to resolve it and obliterate it entirely. That way you have one classless society that no longer has those antagonisms. I'm obviously speaking in very general philosophical terms here, but like, it's a very recurring flaw, and I think that's actually the one of the biggest pitfalls that liberal philosophers fall into. That's one of the points that myself and probably a lot of leftists who do understand this philosophy will be critical of people like Rousseau and Jefferson and Madison for. We just need to make everyone rich. Easy solution? Yes. Because when everyone's rich, nobody's rich. And when everybody's rich, nobody's poor. Fucking, I'm turning into syndrome. Or everyone should give me money so everyone is poor. True, that's the real solution. This is praxis. One Lithuanian man now owns everything on Earth. Everyone is poor. Jeff Bezos is fucking living on the streets with the rest of us. All right, last one, and then I'll end stream. This has gone a lot longer than I expected it to. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. In his Philosophy of Right, Hegel expressed concern that the standard of living of the poor might drop so far as to make it even easier for the rich to amass more wealth. Hegel believed that, especially, I call this philosophy Hassanist socialism. Based, I am a Hassanist. I am the most professional racist. All wealth should be owned by one guy. That's the either Globalize My Agenda 69 or Hassan, interchangeable. These are the two different strains of Hassanist socialism. Hegel believed that, especially in a liberal country such as contemporary England, the poorest will politicize their situation, channeling their frustrations against the rich. Against nature, man can claim no right, but once society is established, poverty immediately takes the form of a wrong done to one class by another. You're Hassan and that's your alt. Okay, yeah. Then in either case, all wealth is owned by Hassan. I see. Concerned the standard of living of the poor might drop so far as to make it even easier for the rich to amass more wealth. I mean, this has just happened, right? This is a very pronounced tendency in like, well, in liberal countries. He mentions England, but like, yeah, we've actually, there's economic data, plenty of economic data that shows this. As one of these things happen, the other happens. The only way that the standard of living for the poor can drop is if it also coincides with an increase in the amount of wealth that the rich have, right? Like, it's hard to say this. Like, this isn't a zero-sum game per se, but in one way, like the wealth from one this is a weird German flag. It's my favorite German flag. Based non-binary. Or actually asexual. That's not the NB flag, that's the ace flag. The wealth from one set of interests can't just disappear. It actually has to go to other interests, right? Unless we're talking about like 2008, there are some speculative investment crashes where wealth can kind of disappear, but that's because the social recognition of that wealth no longer applies. If we're talking about more materially measurable wealth, then it can go in one of two directions. It can go from the poor and propertyless up to the rich and propertied, or it can go down from the rich and property down to the poor and propertyless. Has Twitch gone woke? Yes. That was me. I did that. I made Twitch woke. You're welcome, everybody. The best racist is also the most woke racist. I've made Twitch woke. When will they go broke? Jury's out on that one. I don't know. But yeah, okay, cool. So Hegel's basically describing that, like, oh yeah, this same dynamic that everybody else has described exists, where like the fate of the rich and poor are like inversely proportional to one another. Okay. What did we learn? I think it was that Marx was based, and that stateless, classless, moneyless society is what we need to do, because states always favor the interests of the propertied class, and also money, it just concentrates in the hands of the propertied class. We need to not have classes either, because that means that there can be a distinction. There can be like sorting of people like into like, oh, these people control all the stuff, and then these people like have nothing to eat. and shit like that. We learned that Caesar was a commie. Yes, that's right. We did learn that, and that's based. Anyways, won't go broke. That's true. MPG8 make what great again? Oh yeah, make make Pokemon great again. Yes, thank you. Very cool. Anyways, that's all for stream today. I'm gonna figure out how to fix that React Andy when the next thing comes up. Have a good night. I'm gonna raid somebody. Cody Schwab is live, so I will raid him. Good stream. I might turn some of that into a segment. Bye bye.